Good morning. Welcome to Capital Grounds Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Miller. I've got my co-host here, Joe Fisher and Luis Cortez. We're with SITG Capital, a real estate investment firm based out of Texas. We focus on multifamily properties. We've got properties in Austin, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and we're continuing to expand. We view the current environment as go time. We believe that this is an excellent opportunity for strong operators to really capture more market share in these, particularly in these metros. But we're here to bring you some coffee talk. That's the grounds, part of Capital Grounds, and real estate news, and then more importantly, interesting real estate topics, though may be interesting to us. So hopefully you enjoyed this morning's topic. We're going to be talking about what happens when stuff gets too expensive, with rates increasing. We've seen property values explode over the last couple of years. What happens? Where does it end? What breaks the camel's back? So we'll talk through, a number of different drivers. But gentlemen, how are you this morning, gentlemen?
Doing well, Nick. Thanks for asking, man. Luis, how you doing?
No complaints here. Just ready to get this rocking and rolling.
Luis, I love the hat. Is that felt?
Yeah, this is mostly rabbit or hair and with some beaver mixed in. It's about a 20x quality, so it's not a pure beaver, but the maker's Greeley. And you're talking about things being more expensive, and that's exactly what I was thinking about my hat. I'm like, damn it! If I'd have bought this hat 2 years ago, I'd have saved about $200. It was literally $200 more now than it was 24 months ago. So, but yeah, it's a color I've been actually going after. It's called Agave by Greeley, and definitely one of my favorite makers. So I've got 3 or 4 of their hats now. One of them, the one custom hat that was literally made for my head, is can't speak highly enough for them. They're out of Greeley, Colorado. Trent Johnson's the owner and head hat maker there, and he's a character. If y'all want to follow him, and he's a great hat maker, and they make a really good product.
I love it. Looks good. It looks nice.
Thank you.
But what's in the cup? Anybody drinking coffee this morning?
Yeah, I got mine. So I don't know if I shared this mug before, but
hey,
here we go. Here, Nick, little throwback here to some Boulevard Brewing, brewed in Kansas City, right? So I love this mug. I love the shape of it. I love how it fits in your hand, all of that stuff. This is my favorite mug for a long time. And it was kind of in the back of the cupboard for a little bit, and I saw it the other day. And I thought, you know what? I need to break that back out, get some coffee going back in it. So
that's like the classic cafe mug, it's thick-walled, stout.
Yeah, exactly. Had it for a long time, and I love it. But I'm not gonna lie to you, Nick. I've been pretty basic the last couple of days. We're getting into those cooler days, and by cooler, I mean at least we're below 90, right, Luis, down here at least at times. So
at least we're below 100. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So it sparks the let me see if I can get something fall tasting. And so I had my regular coffee with just a touch of pumpkin spice creamer. So yeah, you might ask if I'm a 12-year-old girl or something, but you know what? That's okay. I'll live with my decisions.
Hey, that's all right. You like what you like, right?
That is true. What about you, Nick? What do you got?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, speaking of Kansas City, trying a new blend this morning. It's the Roastery Kansas City blend. The Roastery is a Kansas City roastery, named as it is. Anyway,
a great one too.
Yeah, Kansas City blend. I haven't had this before. This is the first morning. Although I'll be pretty blunt and transparent. I'm under the weather right now, so my taste buds are all out of whack. So I can't tell you if I like it or hate it. I can't even tell you that I'm drinking coffee right now. But
that's okay. We can revisit it next week, and you can tell us all about the notes you taste and all that.
Yeah, I've got a new mug here. Actually, it's a new old mug. So my wife's grandmother passed away here a few weeks ago, and this was her mug. So this is my Jackie Kramer mug, and one of my new favorite mugs now. It's a great shape. So a lot of memories here, but that's what I'm sipping this morning. And
Man.
Luis, are you chugging the C4, drinking water? What are you
Actually,
up to?
today it is the White Monster. So
The
Nice.
White Monster.
the
Oh,
White
man.
Monster, as we yeah, my sons say I'm racist because I only drink the white ones. So but man, back to the weather, it being cooler. You're from Texas when you're
Mhm.
rolling around with the windows down and it's 93 out and you're like, oh my God, this feels so good.
That's pretty nice. Yeah, exactly.
I told my
No,
wife the
I
other day,
love fall in Texas though, Luis. I don't know about you, but it is the best time of year.
Well, I told somebody, let's see, where was I coming from? Oh, actually, no, it wasn't. I'm sorry, I forgot where I was going, but we were talking about, yeah, it's a big difference. I say, yeah, 93. Most people would be like, that's hot. I'm like, but when you've been over like 105 for like 90% of the days of the last, I don't know, 90 or so, with a 10-point, 12-point heat index. I mean, it feels like 120. That's almost a 30-point drop. So actually it does. I mean, it does feel a lot different. I think yesterday we hit 90 yesterday here.
Yeah.
And it still felt pretty good.
I think Dallas and Austin too. We're not humid right now, at least, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times we're not too humid. Houston, that's a little bit different, but yeah. So I mean, 93 doesn't feel too bad if you got a breeze. At least we'll take it, right? So hey, I do have an energy drink for you to try though.
Yeah, what is it,
Luis? So there's a guy here that he's in real estate. He does a bunch of other things, but one of the things he does is he's got an energy drink that he just released not too long ago. And it's interesting. I tried it the other day. My wife actually got a sample of it, brought it home. And I think it's called Goat Fuel. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't show it to you. But what I thought was really interesting about it is it's actually made from mushrooms. That's where it gets the caffeine from. So he is saying there's a lot of he's saying there's like a lot of benefits to it versus what you're going to get from say a Monster. You're going to get the energy, but you're not going to get some of the things that they pump into it that kind of make you feel all jittery and everything. So I thought that was interesting. We're going to go to coffee here. I don't know when, probably next week or something. So I'll talk to him a little bit more about it. Maybe see if I can get you some samples or something.
I just want to try it for the name.
Well, it's a good name. It's a good brand, I think. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I'll try anything once, man.
Yeah.
so is that goat as in like greatest of all time, or is it goat as in the animal?
Oh, no, I think I think it's greatest of all time. Yeah.
That's cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice, man. Well, so we're talking about the weather. What I noticed when we lived up in Minnesota is that your body adjusts to whatever the average temperature is. Is it the same way down in Texas? You guys get pretty comfortable with 90-degree heat?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't mind it being warmer most of the time. Luis, you might feel differently, but Kansas was tough for me just because you would have really cold winters and you'd have really hot summers. At least down here, I know, man, it's going to be terrible for a few months, but then the rest of the year, it's going to be good.
Yeah. I will say, I mean, especially because, here, we're, part of the hill country. So we get some, nice breezes, but I will say this summer was definitely different. We've been through some hot summers, but this summer was the first time I've actually seen like trees and well-established bushes and things like that literally just get cooked. You know what I mean? So I just we were so dry and no rain. Like I think because of the heat and the no rain, I think is really what did it. Because you've had the summers where you open the door and it feels like you step out in the oven, and we definitely had that, but it just really was different this summer. So I don't know. I hope that's not going to be the case moving forward. Because I told Lydia, I was like, I don't know if I could stay here when I'm older. I mean, I just really don't. And I'm a born and bred Texan, so I mean, I mean, and that's the funny thing is like growing up playing baseball, you play year round pretty much, but you're definitely playing during the hottest months, and it never bothered me when I played. And I don't know, that's because you're active, you're always moving and sweating and hydrating and everything. But man, I tell you, some of the days where you're just like, man, my AC in the car can't even keep up, or your house AC can't keep up, or your AC goes down, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, like it is really hot in my house. So, yeah, it was definitely a different summer for sure. I was very surprised we stayed. I mean, when we went to Costa Rica, and when we got back, that's when it was already over 100, and then it just like kept going. So that's where it was. I can't remember that many days, not just over 100, but like literally over 105, back to back. So
yeah.
So I don't know.
Think
I'd like to get used to it.
To adapt to.
I'd like to get used to it, but man, I tell you, I have never seen landscaping
like that.
Cook. Like literally, I've got trees that I've lost. You think about losing them in a freeze. Okay, that makes sense. But man, to lose them in the summer,
No, I agree with you. Yeah. It's been tough, for sure.
Yeah. Anyhow.
Well, hopefully we'll have some cooler weather in the near future.
Yeah, that's just inflation with the weather as well.
Yeah. Speaking of inflation, I would say, what do we got happening in the news? Nick, I think you had something. I had something too. What do you got?
Yeah. So this is from CoStar. Man, I love CoStar. CoStar's great.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's talking about
junkies.
Yeah, so there's an article that I was reading recently about the 4 metros in Texas. The 4 largest metros in Texas have slower multifamily construction permits than they saw in the previous year. So still quite a bit more than the average, but still not nearly enough for what we need. So just to throw out some quick numbers here as an example, in Houston, first quarter of this year, they had almost 5,800 permits, which is quite a bit less than the final quarter of 2022 at 6,700. And then when we look at it long term, that's still 60%. The first quarter this year at 5,800 is still 68 or 60% more than the average of 3,500 permits. That's based on a 10-year range from 2012 to 2022. So we're starting to see things slow down. Yeah, I could rattle off some numbers for Dallas and the Austin markets, but I think that's just a good snapshot of what's going on. So we're starting to see things slow down.
Sure.
You're looking at construction costs that are 30 to 50% higher than they were the year before. That's a big driver. But as you guys see, as we see day in and day out, the demand still remains strong. It's still a massive shortage. So
yeah, still a lot of people moving in. There's jobs. I mean, Dallas just got Frontier Communications, another Fortune 500 company, just announced they're moving their headquarters to Dallas, right? So when you have people moving to an area, when you have the job growth, all of those things, it's gonna, those trends aren't going away anytime soon. So even though there's a pullback, to Nick's point, in supply, there is still a lot of demand. So we don't think in fact, there was actually another article, Nick, and I think maybe you and I had seen it a little while back, that had talked about how most of that supply is 4 and 5 star units.
yeah,
so luxury or high end, and that because of that, particularly in Houston, workforce housing rent growth has actually outperformed because they're just not building a lot of affordable housing right now.
Supply continues to be limited.
Yeah, exactly. So for those of us out there that aren't making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, it's a tougher market to find something in. So I thought that was interesting. I also had a quick snapshot on just what's going on in general, and some of it ties in, but home builder confidence is down significantly, with mortgage rates still above 7%. So you have a lot of builders needing to either, and we've seen a couple tactics that they use, but either drop the price or try to buy down the rate for buyers, right? So that's persistent. One positive though is kind of the global concerns over banking and, hey, are we gonna have more bank failures? That has come down significantly. So basically the sentiment is that, there's a 1 in 50 chance of a 2024 global growth turning out as weak as in 2009 during the worldwide financial crisis. So we're saying like the chance of this being bad is continuing to go down, I guess. And then the final point was really just some construction cost spikes, which maybe lead into yours, Nick, as far as pulling back on permitting. If the numbers don't work, you're not going to do it right. But a big piece of that has been tied to diesel fuel increasing by 40% in August alone. So there's a lot of things that go into that, right? If you're getting concrete, those trucks have to use fuel to come out to it, to the site. So there's a lot of things that go into that you don't necessarily see on the surface, and so that's causing some increases in construction costs overall.
Yeah, and I think these are great news pieces because that's what we're going to be talking about today, right? As prices continue to increase, although, now I think we're starting to get to a point where the rate of increase, so, if you want to get back to physics, that's how I view the world. The acceleration is starting to slow down, so things aren't increasing as much, or in some places they've stabilized or plateaued.
Right.
But, at the end of the day, if the costs are still out of reach for a lot of people, in all of these instances, it's basic supply and demand, right? We can go back to, I don't know when you first learned about economics, maybe in high school or middle school, but, supply and demand is the driver for so many things. And we've seen high demand for a number of years where you've got massive housing shortage. And in a lot of these instances, the supply hasn't been keeping up. And if you take Dallas as a great example, we've up until maybe this year, but still with large number of multifamily construction permits still being issued, that's positive, right? That's a positive sign. But then when you look at the fact that the population continues to increase, if it's one thing to deal with the shortage, a static shortage, right? Where you need 10,000 more homes, that's a number that's achievable. But when you've got the population that continues to increase and the rate of increase is increasing, it's a hill to climb up. And then when you look at the cost of construction going up, it continues to limit things overall.
It does. Yeah, it makes it hard to to be able to afford it, right? And that's a scary thing. There are a lot of countries that are dealing with this, in a it's much more severe for them than it is for us. I know in Stockholm, for example, there are up to 30-year wait lists just to get an apartment.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, this is not a new issue across the board in the world even, right? We have dealt with it for a long time. Here in the US, we, 2008, 2009, we began on that track of we're not going to build as much. And we're now seeing those supply issues rear their head because we've underbuilt for more than a decade now. And one of the solutions we actually had this happen back going into the 70s. This happened. We had a supply shortage and prices were expensive. And one of the things that helped drive that down was the actually building of, what do you call them? Like trailer homes and modular homes and things like that, was more than 50% of the supply at that time. And that really helped as far as bringing down prices, right? Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily a solution now. Maybe it is. I would love to see some type of viable manufactured home or something like that. And I think in another podcast, we'll kind of talk about what options there are for that. But yeah, I mean, Nick, you're right. Just supply isn't there.
Yeah. Well, I know in Austin, there's these tiny home communities, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen
And
those.
I can't imagine those, running more than $30,000 or $40,000, which they're built
man,
like
check it. No,
are they more than that?
They're over 100,000 easy.
Really?
Man.
Now,
I've
what
seen,
about
which
construction
is crazy.
costs though?
the construction costs are low. That's the thing. But yeah,
and I get the market, but what I'm saying is it could there be a space, and obviously it's not vertical, but could there be some, as far as like affordable housing, right? For HUD to come in and build those type of things. So instead of putting them, so that they give them enough space, but things that are meant to last more than what a double wide would, right? Because that's the one thing about prefab modular type homes is I think the life expectancy of that product is probably 10 to 15 years. Maybe they're built a little bit better.
Yeah, that's a good point, Luis.
So it's like, all right, well, how do you put somebody in something that they don't get quite the space, but they get a solid roof over their head, they get a foundation, you know what I mean? They get an actual house, that has real plumbing, real electrical work, or I should say traditional, not real, but that was kind of the thought that was going through my head and I get it, these tiny homes have become more minimalist. And so that market, the people that want that are willing to pay, probably, an exorbitant amount to be in that. It's almost more the convenience factor, right? But the other thought I was thinking is even just the separation of 90 miles between Austin and San Antonio. I was talking to a gentleman, actually, he's a guy who shapes my hats. And he has, I think he said a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in San Antonio. And I'm just for privacy, I'm not going to share the number, but that he's literally paying for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, roughly a couple $100 difference between what an average 1-bedroom runs. Not even in Austin proper, but like the outskirts, like the
outskirts, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like 1-bedroom, 1-bath Cedar Park apartment is about $1,200. You know what I mean? That I know that because my son was looking for an apartment recently, my oldest, and I'm like, how the heck even apartments, right? How the heck are people supposed to afford a $1,200 apartment?
It's wild.
Yeah, I mean, my P&I is barely more than that, so it's just it's kind of mind-blowing, but I don't know exactly what to attribute it to, because of course all markets are different. Of course, people probably, this is Austin, it's such a high demand and low supply right now, and of course with where interest rates are, and that just goes back to show, right, how our financial system being built on the availability of credit. And even for the first time in a long time, seeing homeowners, even in Austin, giving incentive, right? I mean, to think just over 12, probably about 15 months ago, I mean, there were bid wars on homes, right?
Yeah,
look at 24 months ago, there were multiple offers a day. The sign went in the ground. You know what I mean? This thing was basically pre-sold, even a resale, not even a new construction, right? And it was for new construction, it was bring your highest and best offer, and we'll build you a house, and you'll have it in 12 months.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and that's not even 2 years removed, right? So it's kind of like, wow, this just shows you how much power interest rates have, even in a high demand market like Austin.
Right.
To shift, but the markets that aren't quite as stabilized, San Antonio, I think San Antonio is a stabilized market, but it just goes to show you that it doesn't have quite the demand Austin does, and the flexibility that they have, even 90 miles to our south. But I'm more sure there's some case studies we could put together of other metros, or either other maybe even smaller cities. Maybe like a Tyler, or even a Lubbock, right? Where you can go in and grab some data to show, the supply and demand there versus other states. And it just goes, it's just fascinating, right? Because, sometimes I do feel like we live in a vacuum, because, I still go down to the Domain and it's still pretty packed, you know what I mean, on the weekends. And it might not be quite as crazy as it was, but it seems like people still have a lot of disposable income. And I know that is not the case.
Yeah, it does appear to be everywhere. That way. Yeah.
I know that's not the case everywhere. But it's surprising. I think sometimes we lose sight of that. So either people are going into debt like crazy, or people actually do have some disposable income. So
I think the rates, I think we all are a little bit surprised that the prices really haven't fluctuated or come down any, with rates being as high as they are. Now, I know 7% isn't exorbitantly high. We've had higher rates before in our history, right? But 7% is a lot more than what we were paying, to your point, Luis, even 15 months ago or so. So I think we're all surprised that that hasn't affected home prices as much. In fact, I know Dallas, I don't know the stats on Austin, but I know Dallas, the prices have actually still gone up. Now it's low, it's not growing double digit percentage, it's 2-3%,
Right.
but still that's what you expect in a normal market, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's just really tough. I have some younger sisters. I feel for them. Luis, I feel for your sons, because if we don't figure this out, I'm not sure how the younger generation is going to be able to afford to be homeowners at
Yeah.
all.
Well, and I like from a policymaker's perspective, the financial world has, I mean, markets are beautiful things, but they're complicated, right? And you
Yeah.
think about when we did have rock bottom rates, we had a massive number of construction permits being issued. It was easy to get people to, for the most part, to get people to uh, uh, have new constructions, right? Or go in and improve old properties. But then you also had institutional investment firms that were coming in and buying up single family homes, right?
Hmm.
So
Mhm.
you've got a scenario that arguably couldn't be better for construction companies, for developers to come in and add to the supply. But then you've also got institutional firms just sucking those up. As I've heard absurd numbers, like something
Hmm.
like 40% of properties sold were purchased by institutional
I mean, if that's true, yeah,
investors.
that's a lot. Yeah.
And I'm
I wonder,
skeptical of that high of a number, but
yeah, I
Yeah.
wonder if some of that data though was these iBuyers coming in and buying stuff, like your Zillows
Redfin.
and Orchards and Redfins. Yeah, they were. I wonder if
Hmm.
that's part of the data
Could
because
be. Yeah, I think
because
so.
they were buying things from
perhaps,
people for
sure,
them to go buy another house. So I don't know if that's
sure.
any of that calculation, but of course then
Yeah,
they
that's a
got
good
left
point.
held.
It could
They were
be.
way overpaying and they got left
Hmm.
holding a bag too. So
Yeah, some of them did. You're right.
yeah,
You're right. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
me personally, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a fan of density, especially in our cities. Like let's make it easier for developers to go up and to add more units and to use more of the space within our cities instead of this urban sprawl we've been doing.
hmm
That's where I'm at. We're gonna be able to accommodate for a lot more people that way. You can have people that don't necessarily need a car if they're within some of those urban cores and they can walk to their grocery store or walk to their restaurants or whatever. You have some public transportation they can take.
yeah,
So as things become more expensive, people are going to have to cut things from their budget. So what do they reasonably cut? I mean, you can't cut housing. You have to be able to have a place to live. I mean, that's
yeah,
that's one of the very basic needs, right? So things like cars or things like um what you're spending to commute daily, those can be factors that I think can potentially improve. And if you're increasing the supply, of course the price can and should stabilize.
But here's the thing about building up, right? Is that you, at least from a city perspective, and I'm not a civil engineer, so bear with me, but there's a lot of infrastructure that you have to build up and accommodate for those higher density areas. And our city's really looking to spend that kind of money. You know what I mean? At least right now. I
I
feel
mean,
like
if they're not going to on that, then what are they going to spend it on? Is kind of my opinion, and a lot of that infrastructure is already
fair.
there. I mean,
yeah,
or put some of it, which they already do. They put a lot of it back on the developers. I mean, we know we've got a project that
Yeah.
is a dense project, and we don't get any help from the city, zero. In fact, they're more of a detriment to the project than they are, any type of benefit.
mhm,
So I think cities and local governments in particular just need to understand that, hey, if you want to fix this problem and you want to make things more affordable, you have to find a way to work better with developers and with the community in general, to be able to provide what your constituents need, which is affordable housing.
Be part of the solution.
Correct. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. The other element, and of course this gets back into kind of politics or policy, um, is this migrant issue we're having, right? We're having a flood of more people that don't have somewhere to live, that it's creating more, supply and demand issues. And then of course, I mean, Texas being a border state, we have to deal with it firsthand. Then, and I think about Austin and other cities that also have a huge homeless problem. So it's kind of like, where do you put all these people? So that even creates more pressure on the system, and probably even creates more upward movement in pricing, right? Because somebody's gonna, either put them up somewhere temporarily, which again takes away from supply, and and it doesn't help the demand, it doesn't help suppress demand. So which again pushes prices up. So there's not a quick fix. I mean, I think we would agree that family housing, creating, finding appropriate use for density, all makes sense. But it's like, you can't click your fingers and make it happen overnight, right? I mean, it still takes time. And of course you have bureaucracy, especially in Austin. That a big reason I don't live in Austin is because, man, the city is a very slow moving, and there's just a ton of red tape to cut through. So they make it they make it very painful. It's like they want to solve the problem, but they don't want to make it a friendly process, which to me it seems to be backwards. So
I agree.
But yeah, and I don't know, I can only speak for where I live, but I'm more sure there are other cities that are faced with that. And you would assume that politicians or representatives would want to, that's not a red or blue issue. That's an American issue, right? Like, that's something where it's like, all right, we got to figure, you got to be able to figure this out, because it benefits everybody. It's not a, so I don't know. And the other thing too is, I mean, I'm as much a capitalist as anybody, but being able to make it an appropriate return without having to, tumble dominoes. You know what I mean? So I think there's too much. I think there's too much of that. There's people who, of course, maximizing profits. I mean, when you take, risk reward is always something you have to evaluate.
Sure.
However, I think that some of these issues that we're also dealing with is, I remember when I had my real estate license, and, I was doing some training, and one of the kind of little sayings they had is, you never have an unrealistic buyer, you only have an unrealistic seller. Because, at the end of the day, it's like, let's just say you want $2 million for your house, and the most offer, or you're constantly getting consistent offers in the 1.2, 1.3 range, but you won't budge off your $2 million. It's usually the person who's unloading it, right? But sometimes you get that, you right, especially in a high demand market. You're like, nope, I'm not moving unless I get this. And every once in a while they get it, and then of course it kind of resets the market. It's kind of ridiculous too, like what these professional athletes get paid these days. I mean, I think honestly, I think it's sinful, because people don't realize you're paying all that. You're paying that because you watch and tune in for the advertisements, and you do the subscriptions, and you know what I mean? We as citizens create that. I mean, it's nuts, right? The way it all works. And at some point it's going to break. I kind of feel like there's already fractures, depending on, but at some point it's going to break the entire wheel. And it's going to take a long time to put it back together. Realistically, if we truly had let the system work the way it was supposed to work back in 08, 09, we should have had, I mean, that should have, maybe that, I don't know if that puts the lights out, but there should have been an appropriate amount of letting people fail, right? And let it rebuild itself. I mean, that's my point of view. Because I think, when you continuously, it's that back to that lack of accountability, right? And I think when you breed that, it tends to create other issues. And I think part of that is right now, right, the unaffordability, because there's still plenty of people making money, but the average person right now is really struggling to find, a roof over the head at a price that they can actually do, and not be having to survive on. I mean, I don't mean everybody, but I mean, people are probably having to live on ramen right now because how expensive their housing is. And,
Yeah.
and in a place like Austin, it's really tough to not have a car unless you live, like, let's say you live downtown, you work downtown, you can walk
Yeah.
to work or ride your bike or whatever. It's
Yeah,
really
these aren't
tough because
really
we're all spread
friendly.
out. Yeah, we're also
Yeah.
spread out.
Mhm.
So, I mean, these concepts that we're talking about, I think at the end of the day, it really makes a case where, especially from a return standpoint, people are trying to navigate, okay, well, you have this issue and I have assets that I want to deploy. I have capital that I want to deploy. Like, where can I go? Where do I go to make sense? I'm like, well, that's why I think our offering exists. And it makes a good case, and we can make a case of why. But it's also, it's not just, we're not just in it. I always emphasize this on our podcast, is we're not just in it for the return, right? We want to help improve the health of this overall system by doing our part. It's not just about making money.
Well,
and I
yeah,
wish more people would pursue it that way, is what I
yeah,
guess I'm getting at.
yeah, I agree. I think that's a big reason why we're passionate about workforce housing, right?
Yeah.
Because there is such a big need there. It is, what we can play a part in making things affordable and livable and healthy environments for people to live in that are reasonably priced, right? So that's a big thing for us, and that's where we want to be. And to Luis's point about returns, I think returns will come if you do things the right way, right? So that's kind of our philosophy. But let me ask you guys this, and Nick, if you want to close us out after this, that might be
Yeah.
a good idea.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I just want to ask you guys, and we can go around and give our opinions. If home prices do not drop and rates do not come down significantly, what is going to happen for those of us out there, the listeners, or people we come in contact? We mentioned, Luis, your sons, my younger sisters, maybe even further down the line. What's going to happen from their perspective to the affordability of housing? Will they be able to buy homes, let's say, in the next decade?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I in any of those instances, I'm going to have to trust the markets, right? If prices, because here's the thing, if we're in a supply shortage right now, there's going to be some point where the numbers make more sense for more developers to get in, whether that means the prices continue to increase to the point where it makes sense on paper, right? Because when you dig into the numbers, it's all about risk and return, kind of as Luis mentioned earlier. So at some point, it's going to make sense. Either the costs of construction are going to have to come down, or the prices are going to continue to increase to the point where it does make sense, and then we're going to add to the supply. But even then, if the prices stay high, we're going to have a larger homeless population problem. We're going to have to create some sort of incentives. The government's going to have to provide some sort of incentives. What I hope happens is that this painful growing period drives more innovation, right? Whether it's
Yeah, that'd be good.
A drop in construction costs. We've seen, 3D printed homes, if you will, right? We've seen different methods of making concrete that are lower cost and more efficient or stronger. So hopefully we'll see some innovation come out of this, but at some point there will be a solution. I just don't know how painful it's going to get in the meantime.
Yeah. Luis, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think actually Nick brought up a point that I was kind of, as you were asking that question, I was like, there's going to have to be innovation, right? In multiple facets. But your question is pretty loaded because there's a lot of edges to that.
Oh yeah,
and I could probably attack it from a bunch of different ways. The biggest things that came to my mind was, number one, you either have to see an increase in wages, because this all comes down to time value of money and cash flow, right?
Right.
People's ability to afford. So, part of the innovation may be 35, 40, 50-year mortgages.
Yeah,
that could be a
that's
solution. I think you're going to see either metros completely expand, or you're going to see metros shrink, because you're going to have enough people that say, you know what, almost gentrification, right? Where like, I don't want to afford to live here anymore. I'm moving out of the state. I'm moving out of, or at least I'm moving out of the metro. I'm moving from Cedar Park, Austin to freaking East Texas, where, I can actually afford something. So I think you're going to see expansion or contraction in the metros, in the metro areas. But I do also feel that another solution could be, right, more multifamily, right, and maybe even instead of, we talk about density, right, instead of seeing, and I'm not a code guy, or and you're on the development side. I don't know what the limitations are as far as how high you can go, but to me it's like, all right, can we go from having 3-story apartments to 5 or 6 or 7-story apartments? Could we go more vertical and give more options, and reduce your cost of construction per unit, overall rents, on average, right? Like I said, there was a lot of different ideas that were going through my head as you were asking the question.
Yeah.
I think about my kid, right? And I mean, his car insurance, right, is literally what I was paying less for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in 2004 than he pays for his car insurance right now.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild? And this
really
was
is
in Austin.
Yeah.
In Austin, literally where the Apple campus is right now today. In 2004, I was paying $675 for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. And his car insurance is more than that as a 19-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nuts. That's nuts.
So
yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead, Luis.
Yeah, I was just going to finish up with saying that there are a lot of different things that can happen, but the kind of the, I guess the or the protagonist, right, in this whole thing is right is where rates are right now. I really don't feel, or not feel, I don't believe economically, right, that we cannot live in these interest rate environments, because we had a 20-year period, almost 20 years, where rates were so low for so long that people that's how people learned how to live. And either people are going to have to adapt, which I think some people are, but I actually was reading somewhere that, consumer debt is, on the rise, and people, especially credit card debt, which you don't see that, unless people are really struggling. Right.
Right.
And during the low interest rate environments, it actually went the other way, where you're thinking, oh, well, if rates are low, people would be using more debt. But because rates were lower, they actually could manage and pay their cards off, versus now they're acute, now they can't keep up with those payments. So, which again, debt can be a beautiful tool to use, but most of us don't have the discipline to use it the right way, and really start, it's kind of a death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's like, all right, I put $1,000 on there, paid 500 off, but now I got another $100 worth of interest, or whatever it is, right? So it's like, once that 19, 20, 21% interest starts kicking in, I just, again, and this all, it goes back to financial literacy and what we've talked about. But yeah, there certainly is a concern. I honestly told my wife the other day, it's like, I had every plan for my son to go to college and be able to kind of, move out and start spreading his wings. But I don't know how he financially does that in the next 3 to 4 years. I really don't. Not at least not. And he even said, it's like, Dad, I don't think I can afford to live in the Austin area. It's like, I'm probably gonna have to move. And I said, well, man, it's like, I don't want you to feel you have to do that. We want to be able to be supportive and everything. But career wise, where he wants to go, he may end up in, he actually is very interested in becoming a national park ranger. So, those you get assignments. So, you can't help where you get those, but I believe they also have a housing program for them. So, it is a brain buster for sure, to figure out how kids of this next generation, even if you're under 25, I mean, I actually talked to somebody the other day, they have their 27-year-olds still living at home because they can't afford to live. They can't afford an apartment. Yeah. So without a roommate, or, there's that's honestly another thing, is like, man, you might have to like, go live in a 3-bedroom apartment or a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 people in it. Who knows? I don't know, man. So it's a big question.
I mean, I hear you. And yeah, on the personal side, my wife and I are both the oldest in our families, and we've had all of our siblings live with us at some point for exactly what you're talking about, Luis. They couldn't afford it on their own.
Yeah.
Right. So I
Yeah.
think my opinion on this is there's going to be a couple things that'll happen. Number one, we're just going to be a nation of renters more and more and more. We see those trends already. It's going to be harder and harder to buy a home and be able to afford that, if things don't change. Number two, you both make good points, but I think the migration perspective just continues to accelerate, right? If you live in New York and you can come get a job in Dallas or Houston, and your rent goes from 4,000 for a studio to 2,000 for a 2-bed 2-bath. I'm just throwing out random numbers, right? And you're still making the same amount of money. It's a no-brainer, right? Why would you not? So I think we're just going to continue to see people migrate to lower cost areas. Right now, that's the Sun Belt. Will it always be? I don't know. I think you've got cities like Kansas City that are affordable, that even people from Denver are saying, you know what, Denver's too much. Let me go somewhere else, and they're landing in Kansas City. So I just think you have a lot of factors, and people will find a way. And Nick, I think you're right about just overall the market will eventually kind of reset itself. Either prices will go down, or costs will go down, or some combination of that, or rates will go down. But I think it's going to be tougher for the younger generation to be able to come out right away and be able to go afford, even a starter home, because we're not building a lot of starter homes either. So
Agreed.
I think that's kind of where we're going to see that go. And I think adolescence, the age of adolescence will increase because of that. I mean, Luis,
we're already seeing that.
Yeah, your sons might live at home longer than you did, right? And I mean, yeah, I mean, we all probably don't necessarily want that, but that's just the reality of
I
how
love
things
my
are
boys,
going.
man. I love my boys, but they the younger one's a lot easier. But man, 19, I mean, you want to do, it's like, I mean, he made a good
You
point.
want
He's like,
true
Dad, I
freedom.
mean, I can't even have friends over. I'm like, well, you can, you just gotta behave yourself, and I'm not a hotel. I mean, I ain't gonna party till 1 or 2, 3 in the morning, so it's like you're not in
Yeah.
college, or you're not in a college dorm. So yeah, your question and everyone's comments definitely hit home, because it's something we're having to really consider. And I never really considered it until like probably this last 6-12 months. I mean, of how are these kids supposed to like go out on their own after, if and when they do finish college. We actually, not for financial reasons, but for other reasons, thought maybe the military would be a good track for him, right? Because he'd get trained, he'd get his school paid for. Hey, kind of everything is built in, and I think he's probably could build some really good skills and grow as a young man, and not only that, but serve his country, right? So we thought that might be a good way for him to kind of ramp up, just because I think in today's world, not to get too much into the weeds, but I mean, he's made a lot of decisions that have put a lot of things on him, right?
Sure.
And
well, he's a kid. That's common.
So I mean,
we've all been there. Yeah.
And again, but being supportive, loving parents, we don't, we're not going to have him live on the street. So he's got a roof over, food on the table, but he's trying to figure things out, right? And I think he's not the only one. There's a lot of kids out there like that.
A lot. I agree.
And I think maybe our generation was probably a little more, I don't know to say motivated, but maybe organized, right? Organized to go to school and get college knocked out. And I think I've met with a couple of his friends, right, that they didn't have any interest in going to school, and they're getting trained or in a field, or whether it be welding or being an electrician, and more power to them, right? Because I think they'll start their career sooner, not have all the school debt if that had to be a case. But it still comes into how the heck do you afford a place? But not only that, but how do you afford a place with other people who are going to be responsible, right? Because I mean, I mean, come on, man. We're talking about the Tide Pod Challenge generation. They do some stupid shit.
Well, I mean, that's true. I think we did too. I mean, Nick and I roomed together in college, so we could probably tell you some pretty irresponsible
stories.
things we did back then, and yeah, that has no effect on what we've become as
but
adults,
doing cake stands on the patio is completely different than some of the stuff these guys do these days. So
fair enough.
I'll tell you what worries me long term. We've talked a lot about the environment we're in right now, where people are struggling to afford homes, but then you think about the way that, and this is way off topic, we could have an entirely different episode just about this, but you think about how Social Security has been mismanaged over the last several decades and are projected to run out of money here in the next 15 to 20 years. So now we've got a situation where you've got young people who aren't able to save money, number one, aren't able to buy a home, which is a wealth builder, right? The single largest wealth builder anybody will ever do. So they aren't making enough money, aren't saving money, aren't able to buy a house. And now the safety net, Social Security is likely not going to be available to them when they look to retire. I think we could have a perfect storm situation brewing that won't be realized for another, 50 years, 40 to 50 years. But unless there's some solutions that are created in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years, I think we're going to have a large issue on our hands. But
well, we got to innovate, Nick, to your point earlier. We got to innovate on multiple fronts there in order to tackle these problems, because they're big problems, and
common sense needs to come back into the room.
Innovate and educate. Those are the keys.
Yeah, those are definitely the keys. But Nick, you got anything else for us today?
So much more, but not today. So I appreciate your time, gentlemen. Thanks for the conversation. If you're Luis's son, I would recommend that you give your dad some forgiveness.
I think it's the other. I think you mean the other way around, Nick.
Oh, maybe. Okay. But great conversation. Enjoy chatting with you guys. Hope the cup of coffee is still good for you. And we'll look to chat again next week. But for our viewers and listeners, if you haven't, we always got to plug our website, sitgcapital.com. Give us a call, shoot us an email. Would love to connect. We've got, investment funds available. We've got individual projects you can get it on. Our income fund pays 10% annually, pays it out on a monthly basis. Great investment opportunity. Anyway, this is go time for us. So give us a call, give us a shout. Would love to connect and hear from you. Leave a comment, subscribe, like, all that jazz.
All of it.
Otherwise, we'll talk to you guys next week and hope to have another interesting conversation. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks, Nick.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks,
We'll
Luis.
see ya.